Hello, thank you for joining today's presentation, Ambulatory EMR Usability, More Nurture Than Nature. Well, what were some of the findings from the research on this report?
So one of our initial thoughts when we started this project was, is usability part of the DNA in some of these systems? And as the title of both the report and this particular webinar indicates, it's not. It's not part of the DNA. It's actually more nurture than it is the nature of the system. So early findings, there are absolutely wide variations in usability. Even within the customer base of any one vendor, there are widely varying experiences and reality.
How do vendors compare when it comes to success in usability?
Based on the data we've collected, usability is not that bad. And here are some perspectives. The question we asked providers was, how successful have you been in getting your system to a high level of overall usability? So we asked the question and said specifically high level. And the dark green said very successful, the light green said successful. So from our perspective, we looked at the green and said, these are folks that are highly successful. What's interesting to me is that even the most challenged vendor on the chart still have more than half of their base that are saying, we're highly usable.
Mm-hmm. The next chart we have here, this looks a little bit like an air traffic control screen to me. Can you tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here?
The first question that we asked providers, one of the first questions we asked them was, tell us about how usable your system was when you went live. And so, again, go back to think about the chart with the green and the dark green. Those are the high usability. That's the data we use for the x-axis on this particular chart. So had good usability at go live. And then we plot that against their perspectives on what their usability is today. But let's take a look at the different quadrants. So slow progress in the bottom left. These are vendors that had poor usability at go live, and that the vendors or the providers have reported back that they are still not making a lot of progress. We asked the question of providers, how effective was your vendor at guiding you through the process of getting to high usability? So the responses they gave us were in terms of good, okay, or not good, and this is how it came in. So what's very clear here is that some vendors take a very active part in this process. So think about the number of Epic, think about the chart before, and the number of Epic providers that said, boy, it took a lot of effort on our part. At the same time, we're seeing a huge investment, at least through their filter to us, to the provider filter to us, we're seeing a huge investment from Epic in helping those clients become successful.
Mm-hmm. Now, we measured vendors and compared them based on usability on several criteria. What did we find there?
Okay, so this chart, let me just take a second and break this down. Lots of color, lots of bars, lots of circles, a lot of stuff. The questions we just showed the audience, that is these 6 elements here, are now broken down by the vendors, so you can see how each of these vendors fares on these topics. Across the board here, what I think is interesting is that the 2 areas that were most nebulous in terms of how do you actually get the thing done, provider feedback on problem lists and provider feedback on medication reconciliation. There's some perspective. They definitely scored their vendors and gave some scoring on how well the things are being accomplished. But to be fair, they also came back and said, there's an awful lot of that there's a lot of decisions and a lot of the decision tree on how these things get done and who takes responsibility and where it ends up. A lot of kind of feedback on it's not just a simple question for the vendor to put some functionality in place and turn it on. There's other issues that really kind of overhang on those 2 topics. I think you also see here that the lowest scoring item across the board is support for mobile device. To be fair, this is the newest, most recent kind of emerging topic or functional area. There are a couple of vendors that scored really well. I had to props to Athena Health and NextGen. Providers scored them really well for those elements. Right. In general, however, I personally wouldn't look at this data and hold vendors too accountable. I wouldn't grill them too hard for this stuff because this is really just emerging stuff. And there's a lot of interest in. We'd like to see some functionality. We'd love to see some additional investment made in mobile piece. But it's not an area that we're really talking about limited data sets on who actually scored it, and what's available to them.
Okay. We'd like to thank all of those who attended today's webinar. If you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes when the webinar closes to share your feedback with us about the presentation, really appreciate it. We're always trying to improve.